Yeah, I saw your TEDx talk, and I was surprised that you didn't have backgrounds about self-driving car before get the job.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you learn? How did you learn it before you get the first self-driving job?
Yeah,
only online course.
Only online courses.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, to be fair, I had been a web software engineer for about 10 years. So I had a very strong programming background, but I had no background in automotive software or robotics, or really not even in artificial intelligence. So I started taking classes online at Udacity and Coursera and edX, and then I just started applying to jobs. Applied to a lot of jobs.
Okay, and then you got the job.
Got the job at Ford.
How long did you study that? You quit before job and then studied.
Yeah, so I actually was running my own software company, web software company. Very small. It was a small company in recruiting software, actually. And I sold that. Not very much money, a little money, not very much. And I spent about 6 months studying classes at Udacity, Coursera, edX, and then I got the job at Ford.
Oh, what? Really? 6 months? Okay. Hey, what? Shorter than I expected.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. Ford told me, you don't have any experience. You don't have any formal education in automotive engineering. There's really no reason we should hire you. But you seem very excited and you seem smart. So would you take an internship? They said, would you take an internship in self-driving cars? And I was way too old. I was very old at that. I was in my early 30s at that point. And I said, yes, I'm really excited to work on self-driving cars. I would love to do an internship. And so I started an internship. They said, oh, this is very good. Would you like to join Ford full-time? And the folks at Udacity. Yeah, I mean, it's not a big competition. It's not like they hire 100 and they say, we're only going to hire, we're only going to bring 10 on full-time. They bring people in. They say, if we like you, we'll keep you. And if we don't like you, hopefully you'll go find something else. They liked me.
So what motivated you to that field so much?
Two things. One, I wanted to join a field that I felt like was going to be a big success. I had done 10 years in my career working for small companies that had kind of done okay, but just fine, not great. So I wanted to join an industry that I felt like was going to be a big success. And the second was I started to think about self-driving cars, and I started to think about the way they have the potential to change the world and just change everything about how we live. And it's just a really cool technology. It's it's at this really neat intersection of software engineering, but also the physical world and mechanical engineering. It just seems like a really fun thing to work on. So,
what would you think that is the remaining issues or remaining challenges in the self-driving cars at this time?
This time?
Technology or cost, there was some legal restrictions.
I mean, everything, there are a lot of different challenges. Almost everything is a challenge, but some of the big areas, motion planning or path planning is a big open area, particularly for urban driving. There are lots of different algorithms people use, but nobody's decided what the best one is. So we know, for computer vision, everybody's using deep learning now. Deep learning is kind of the way you work with camera images. Kalman filters are the main way to work with LiDAR, point cloud data, and radar data, although people are starting to apply deep learning to that, but still most people know they're using Kalman filters for sensor fusion. For path planning, everybody's using a different approach. Some people are using finite state machines. Some people are using rapidly exploring random trees. Some people are using partially observable Markov decision processes. Some people are using just kind of ad hoc algorithms that they kind of make up on the spot. We asked Sebastian, how does Waymo do path planning? And he said, well, if you come up to an obstacle, you just kind of like nudge around it. You look like, if I turn 5 degrees, is that enough? And if it's not, you keep turning to 10 degrees. Doesn't seem like much of an algorithm, but that's what he said. So I think that's a big open area, is motion planning. Localization is a huge area, because right now it is so dependent on maps and keeping the maps up to date, the high definition LiDAR maps. That's very expensive. And so figuring out how to do localization, maybe SLAM, simultaneous localization and mapping, so that you don't need the maps the way that you need them now, that's a big open problem. When I was at Ford, the group I worked on was the group working on the computer cluster in the trunk of the car. And I think that's actually a really tough area, because you have issues of cost and heat and power consumption.
Heat?
Yeah, you can't be too hot, or it's in this little trunk. Like, if it's too hot, how do you cool it? So making it automotive grade, making it fast enough. There's all the sensor data coming in, right? Like, some of these vehicles that Uber and Waymo are using, they have like 8 LiDARs on them. And so all this data is coming into the computer. How do you process it fast enough? That's, I think, a really interesting area. And then there are areas like weather, like snow, driving in snow, big problem. Changes the way the world looks. It changes the way your control algorithms operate. I think human-machine interaction, how does the vehicle look to the humans, both who are riding in the car and who are outside of the car? Vehicle-to-vehicle, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication.
If all of the car became self-driving car.
Or even if only some of them are. Like, what things can the physical world do to help self-driving cars? So you can imagine, like, some companies are talking about putting little barcodes on signs. So on a stop sign, on a speed limit sign, on whatever signs are on the road, there might be a little barcode that says, this is what type of sign it is, and here's the exact geographic location of the sign, so that the self-driving car is able to both figure out what the sign is and localize itself to the sign. That's like a very basic form of vehicle-to-infrastructure communication. But you can imagine the traffic light broadcasting to the car, I'm red right now, I'm yellow, I'm green, that kind of thing. The car is ahead. If I'm a Toyota car and there's another Toyota car up ahead of me, maybe the Toyota car ahead of me says, I'm coming to an emergency stop because of an accident, and that way I get advance warning. That stuff is all, seems like 5-10 years out, but it's starting to be worked on.
So what would you think after self-driving car is implemented on the public road, the world of the future after that?
I think there is the potential for people to live further away from where they work. So further
than now.
Because it's easier to drive. You just get in the car and the car drives you, and you can email or watch Netflix or you eat or whatever, have sex, whatever. So people may live very far away. Then a lot more people may want to go downtown, because if the car drives you, it's also easier to get downtown. Easier to get to Shibuya. If the car drives you and you just get out, you don't have to park. So I think it may be this interesting kind of relationship where more people live further away, but then they all come together in downtown areas because the self-driving cars bring them there. And then maybe the downtown areas are very walkable, because there's not much need for parking. A lot of those parking spaces maybe get converted to buildings or to parks. I think it could be like a much more fun world to live in. You go out to the country, you live in a nice house, you have a lot of land, and then you take your self-driving car, you flag down a self-driving Uber or whatever, and it takes you down to Shibuya, and you do your job, and you go shopping, and then you go home. Seems fun. It's probably a long way away, but self-driving cars are starting in very urban areas, very dense urban areas. Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Phoenix, Singapore. Partly because they're very expensive. The cars are very expensive. And so the companies that are running them want to be able to use the cars 24 hours a day, constantly. And that is more likely in areas where there are lots of people, very dense areas. So the self-driving cars are starting in these very dense areas, and the question is how long does it take them to expand? So maybe the self-driving car starts in Shibuya or downtown Tokyo. How long till you can go to Chiba? In your self-driving car. Maybe once you can get to Chiba like that, then maybe you live in Chiba and you come, or you come to or Yokohama and you come to Tokyo. For work, but at first it will only be in downtown Tokyo, and it'll take a little while to expand.
Chiba was where I live, so because I know that the house in Chiba is not that expensive, and I can afford big house.
Right.
Then work in the urban city and live at rural area. In the big house.
Nice area, right? Nice life, right?
So all of the car will be autonomous taxi kind of, ride sharing.
I mean, it's hard to know for sure. Maybe I think that's a long way away. The average car right now lasts for about 11 years, at least in the U.S. The average car lasts for about 11 years. And so, people are buying cars today, which means they'll probably still, that car will be around, that human-driven car will be around into 2029, 2030. So, maybe one day we'll get to a point where all the cars are autonomous taxis. Maybe there'll be autonomous cars that we own. It's hard to know for sure. I think they'll probably largely be autonomous taxis. And for the reasons I mentioned earlier, because of mapping, because of how expensive the cars are, rural areas will be the last areas to get self-driving cars. And so a lot of people, in Hokkaido will probably still, be driving cars themselves for quite a long time. But for people who live in New York, who live in Tokyo, I think a lot, self-driving taxis are coming pretty soon.